This live stream is brought to you by Jaybefaunt, where you can't dot the font. Well, we're back at it again. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. Why is my head cut off? I'm starting to look like Cameo from that music video, Candy. Tastes like candy. Ow! Anyway, good to see all of you here. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms. So go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you guys have not already, please make sure to give a like to the stream. That pushes me out into the algorithm, that ushers me out, that scoots me forward so that I can be able to reach more people just like you. So good to see all of you here today. If you guys have not already, have you guys subscribed to my Substack? What this does is that it gives you email notifications so that you don't have to rely on the YouTube notifications. Or if you wish to, if you want to just do the YouTube notifications, you can click the link bell that gives you either some notifications for my channel or all notifications for my channel. Either way that you wish, there you go. Yeah, have at it. All right. So thank you so very much for that. A big hello to everybody that's watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Rockfin, and Rumble. It is good to see all of you here. Why are we here today? Well, we have two stories that we're going to be covering, but I want to make sure that one of the first stories I get to with my guest, of course, we have the one and only Placone Returns, and we are going to bring him in right now. Welcome to the channel, Ron Placone. It's good to have you back again.
Good to see you again, buddy. It's been a minute. Hope you're well.
Yeah. How long has it been, man? It feels almost like a family reunion.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I was most active in the space when I was like working on some of those net neutrality campaigns, which, by the way, we did win that one. The FCC reinstated net neutrality. I know it's so bleak out there that whenever we do get some wins, I feel like it's important we mention them because it helps prevent complete hopelessness. So that was a win. And yeah, other than that, I mean, I've been pretty occupied with the movie and whatnot, which I'm real excited for you to see. I know you're a cinephile, so I hope you enjoy my movie. And if you don't, I hope you'll spare my feelings.
Yeah, you made it sound like something like kind of dirty. I'm a cinephile, like I'm a thespian. Like, oh my gosh. Oh, sorry, just the way my brain works. But one of the things that you actually talked about was, net neutrality. That's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of people don't invest their time in. I feel like a lot of people don't have the time to invest their time into, because a lot of people, especially people who are watching right now, they're at work. They have their kids. They may be taking care of their parents. They may be taking care of their siblings. They may be disabled themselves. They may be just trying to hang on for dear life. So a lot of times they don't have the bandwidth to focus on these things. That's what people like you and me are here for.
It's a wonderful pun, by the way. You said bandwidth.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't realize, but yeah. So, wow. Okay. The way my brain works, man. See what happens when you come around.
You're a genius.
You make me a genius. But one of the things is that a lot of times people don't have the wherewithal to really focus on these things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that a lot of people pay more attention to the issues that you bring up, especially when in regards to net neutrality, privacy, and security, things like that. And so one of the things in reality that we just found out was about the recent TikTok ban that just happened. That was actually, dare I say, snuck into that bill that was a bill to pay for Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine. So it's that, and then I saw this video on TikTok as well that I think is deeply important for us to take a look at. And I didn't know this, and I just wanted to chime in with you just to see what your thoughts are. Let me see. Okay. Just making sure I have this ready. I should have had it ready earlier. My apologies, but did my computer just freeze? Oh no.
You're a little choppy. I mean, you're coming through, but you're a little choppy.
Yeah, that used to be my stage name back in the day when I was
Little
dropping
choppy.
it. Yeah.
Give it up for Little Choppy. You're a tall guy, though.
Give it up a little choppy. Okay.
Are you not tall? How tall are you?
I'm 5'10". I'm not like.
So you're not
average.
Yeah,
average-ish.
that's not quite Little Choppy noteworthy. That wouldn't earn you a little nickname, I don't think. 5'10".
No, but if I was short and sweet, then my name would be Sweet and Low. But yeah, so let's go into, is this? Yeah. Okay. So I want to share this with you because I think this is important. It talks about the ACP. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is important too. And I want to combine this along with the TikTok ban. So let's go.
Sure, well, yeah.
It's tomorrow. Tomorrow, the ACP goes away. You know what that is? The Affordable Connectivity Program, the government subsidy that provided just a measly $30 a month that was still enough to keep 23 million households connected to the internet. And it's about to go away tomorrow after being in place now for years. We're about to just disconnect anywhere from 65 million to 80 million Americans, depending on what numbers you're using. It's roughly about that many people. 65 to 80 million fucking people are about to have to figure out all at once how they're going to pay for the internet. And according to the FCC's last survey, roughly 3/4 of those people are going to just stop using the internet in their home altogether. And I want to make sure we're very clear about something. This is going to kill people. This will kill people. The FCC has said that broadband access in your home is one of only a few super determinants of health because it allows people to look up symptoms and know whether or not it's time to go to the doctor. It allows people to get telehealth visits. It allows people to check their prescriptions, change their prescriptions, get refills on those prescriptions. It lets access community support networks. It lets people access remote therapy, any number of good things for us. And we're about to make sure that if you want to access that information, you got to pay full price. And at a time when everybody knows that cost of living is top of everyone's mind, to strip this resource away, this $30 a month subsidy, tiny, but so significant, is nothing short of a moral failing of the country. Because I want you all to keep in mind, this is a bipartisan piece of legislation that has bicameral support in the House and the Senate. Republicans, Democrats, Independents all want this passed. It is because of a few chuckle fucks in Congress not forcing a vote on this, that this is not getting refunded. There's a bill right now, which is the Extend ACP Act, which would give $7 billion immediately back to the program. It could fund it through the rest of this year. $14 billion would fund it, I think, through the rest of this year and into next year for a little while too. We could fund this in perpetuity. This is a fucking rounding error on the U.S. defense budget that would keep our economy competitive. It would keep our citizens connected. It would keep them informed. It would allow them to participate in the global economy.
Do they really want to keep us informed, Ron?
I guess it depends on who you're watching. But yeah, I mean, this person summed up the ACP perfectly. And for anyone who's not in the know, because it's not a super talked about issue, but the ACP is the Affordable Connectivity Act that goes back to 2021. It provides, as that person said, that's all spot on. It provides a $30 subsidy to 23 million households. And the Affordable Connectivity Program officially expired at the end of this month, with the kind of funds that were in, like kind of the reserve funds will be fully depleted towards the middle of May. So honestly, in a couple weeks, there is that bill to extend it. They've just been sitting on it. There are other, pushes out there to kind of rally Congress to actually, yes, force the vote. and make them vote on this. There's also some other programs out there that are intended to kind of pick up the slack to make sure people don't lose internet. But it's such an easy fix. I mean, they can extend this thing with no problem. It's really not costing them that much. I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, although you probably knew if the topic's digital rights, I'm gonna hardcore geek out. So you knew that before you invited me. But this connects to another flagship issue of mine, which is public broadband. I've spoken about it with RBN a number of times, and for anyone not in the know, public broadband, aka municipal broadband, is just making the internet a utility in your life, where instead of some private cable company that's these companies are among the most hated companies in the freaking world, instead of that being the source of your internet is run by your city or municipality. There's places in the United States that already have this. The places that have it experience the best internet at a reasonable price, because internet infrastructure, I'm not going to sit here and say it's completely simple. It's not, but it's not rocket science either. So you really don't need a ton of resources to maintain decent internet infrastructure. You just have to give a poop, and you have to be not solely based on profit, which is how the big cable companies operate. So municipal broadband is very, very successful. And directly connecting it to this issue, all of the public broadband institutions that are out there, Utopia out in Utah, Chattanooga's public broadband, which is some of the best internet in the world at a price that's cheaper than what most people pay, they were able to completely subsidize low-income housing or low-income citizens of their municipalities. So they didn't even have to worry about the ACP, because they were able to completely subsidize via the networks themselves. So that's another advantage of public broadband. It's a public utility and not just some big cable operative. So they can kind of do what they want as far as financing, as far as putting it back into the public. So they're able to, I mean, they provide different levels of service depending on what you want. So if you have a lot of means, or maybe you run a home-based business and you want to pay, top shelf dollar for like the fastest fiber imaginable. Although even just their basic packages are pretty freaking fast. I pay a business cost here in Los Angeles, and the quality of internet I get would probably be equivalent to their just regular service for a muni broadband network. So they were able to just completely subsidize it. Whereas, other people that don't have public broadband or municipal broadband, they're relying on this program, which again, it's a good program because it kept a bunch of people online, and the internet is clearly a utility in our lives. The frustrating part about it is if we took all the resources that they gave to cable, because cable companies got most of this money. The government was giving this money to cable companies. If all that money instead was invested into public broadband, we'd be better off, and we wouldn't have to be worried about anything extending now. So that's sort of the frustrating element of it. And it's just yet another example of how, corporations are just ruining our ability to have nice things. But in the short term, we got to extend this thing, because it's not like you can just snap your fingers and a bunch of public broadband projects will be done. Had they started that in 2021, we would have been a lot better off. But, that wasn't the case. So we got to extend this thing. But so that's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about, and just really quick, an idea of, what if we were to try to get, for those of us in ballot initiative states, try to get a citizen ballot initiative to make it so that all, internet broadband companies are publicly owned, not publicly owned, but municipally owned, either by city or counties, or if we had state owned, but it would like mandate that, or at least make like a competitor for the broadband companies, and then, or something like that. It sounds, maybe I'm just shooting at the dark here, but, something like that will probably, if Citizen Ballot Initiative putting that forth, I think that a lot of people, especially in my state, in Florida, we don't want to pay all these high prices to these.
I mean,
I'd rather it go to like if like say Orlando had a broadband company, I would rather pay my money to go to Orlando because it's going to be cheaper and then I'm going to have better service anyway.
totally. I mean, and yeah, you're not off the mark with like ballot initiatives being a big part of this.
Yeah.
I would say if you went the route of, oh, it has to be publicly owned and no one else can be here, that might be a longer climb just because big cable is going to sue you for that. And
Yeah.
they have very, very powerful attorneys. I think the more kind of quicker ballot initiative would just be to build your own public broadband network, which can certainly be done via ballot initiative. In my state in California, there was actually a broadband bill that financed a ton of public broadband throughout the state that was signed into law. It's, one of the few things Gavin Newsom did that didn't completely tick me off. He's done a lot of other things that have ticked me off, but that wasn't one of them. That was a good thing. But basically what it did was it just made a skeleton of broadband, and then it's up to cities and municipalities to basically get their extension claw onto that skeleton to give everyone internet. So we're a couple steps closer to getting extensive public broadband here in California. We don't have as much red tape as some other states in comparison. So yeah, those kind of things those are effective ways to make it happen. And you can start literally in your neighborhood. There's a town of 7,000 in Massachusetts that did this. They just decided they were being underserved by the big cable companies. They got together and were like, screw it, we're just going to build our own internet. They did, and now they have this crazy fast internet. They're a town of 7,000 people. So if they can do it, I think anyone can. It's not a one size fits all scenario. And, there's definitely different hurdles depending on, are you in a place with a lot of mountains? Are you like whatever? But it can be done. And there's tons of contractors there all throughout the country that kind of specialize in this sort of thing. And, I hate to say, I'm not going to, I am one of these people. I think that every hardship, that there is an opportunity component of it. And with as terrible as the pandemic is, the one kind of lemonade out of lemon situation was people really realized how much the internet is a utility in our lives. And they realize how underserved they are by big cable. I mean, we found out when kids weren't able to physically go to school, we found out that, hey, here in Los Angeles, 1 in every 3 children doesn't have internet sufficient enough for a Zoom call. That's freaking unacceptable, especially when they were in a situation where they couldn't go to school otherwise because it was all over Zoom. So it really brought the digital divide front and center. And just in a few short years, this space has gone from, sort of an obscure talking point in the indie media space, via, people like me and a couple nonprofits, to being this really booming space where most cities have, nonprofits and other entities dedicated to digital equity. So that's sort of a new thing. And, for someone like me, who's just sort of been a, policy geek about this stuff for literally 20 years now, it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. And in line with that, speaking of which, all things internet, as we see just a couple of weeks ago, there was a appropriations bill that was to appropriate funds, of course, to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, really, just to keep U.S. hegemony alive and well within the regions, combating against China, Russia, and Iran, for the sake of basically keeping their claws over there. And there was a bill. Part of that bill was actually an act to essentially ban TikTok after 1 year.
Yeah.
And so I just want to share this as well, because they're really saying the quiet part out loud. This is out of Rolling Stone. It says lawmakers admit they want to ban TikTok over pro-Palestinian content. It says a potential ban looms over the platform. Some are admitting that they hope that the app's demise will help kill pro-Palestinian sentiments online. Just your first initial thoughts about the sneaking in this ban along with this bill to fund, these 3 different regions to keep the United States grips basically on the world.
So, yeah. So first of all, you mentioned a lot of things that are really key factors in everything going on here. First and foremost, the discussion that article references, because I could tell via the photo, is a discussion between Mitt Romney and Secretary Blinken. I've watched it. I recommend people watch it. You can find the clip where they talk specifically about TikTok. I don't recommend watching the full hour unless you like torture, because listening to those, it's a really creepy thing. Actually, I talked about it on Status Quo. Like, it's really creepy. Like, it starts out with this weird elevator music, and then Mitt Romney comes in, and Mitt Romney always sounds like he's about to lead a cult to like some mass suicide. Like, that's just like, he's like, all right, and now you drink the Kool-Aid. Like, he's just weird. But they talk about TikTok. It is very chilling. They openly admit that they're having problems controlling the war narrative, and they complain about quote unquote images. What do they mean by that? Read between the lines. They mean they don't like the fact that people can see what is physically going on there. They don't they're not mad about the cat videos. They're not mad about the Chinese government. They're mad that people can see what's happening in Gaza. And they're like, he literally, Mitt Romney literally referred to Israel's skills at doing, quote, PR. He literally says that. And they keep saying the word narrative over and over again. So they're admitting that it's all about controlling the corporate pro-war narrative, and things like TikTok threaten that. And, so they're going after TikTok. So that's the big part of this. There's 3 things that are going on here that are really the key components here. One is the censorship element, which we just covered. The other element, and I feel like this element is getting overlooked, but I think it's still very important to note. There's the financial component to this. So one of the big leaders of this bill and the bill prior, which was the Restrict Act, which we're going to get to that in a second, because that answers your question about the sneaking it in part. But one of the key pushers of this bill is Mark Warner. Mark Warner is one of the most wealthy members in the Senate and in the House. His portfolio of assets is obscene, even for an elected official. Like, this guy's portfolio of assets, I mean, it might even dwarf Pelosi, to tell you the truth. I can't say that definitively, but I mean, you could look at the open secrets. It's pretty ridiculous, even for, an elected official. And what's one of the things he has a lot of money in? Well, he has a lot of money in domestic software, domestic apps, and that type of development, which means what helps his bottom line? Well, if you demonize anything foreign. So he has a big financial incentive to scare people about something like TikTok. And this all goes back to the Restrict Act. Now, the Restrict Act, which I talked about on your show, and I think I talked about it with, I think maybe Rome, but I talked about the Restrict Act a couple times on some RBN things. But the Restrict Act was how this was all birthed. And the Restrict Act went far beyond just banning TikTok. That was just one of the things it did. It was basically the Patriot Act Part 2. The Restrict Act was going to crack down on what you could and couldn't do on the internet. It was going to demonize. There was a clause in there that would have allowed the president, whoever's president, to dictate what foreign content you could see. So there would have been a thing where basically any given president could say, oh, that's a video someone made in Gaza. You can't see that. And there was something else in there that would make having a VPN illegal. I mean, I use a VPN. I know a lot of people do. So the Restrict Act, I mean, there was just so many poison pills in that thing. The whole thing was a poison pill. They even called it the Restrict Act. They didn't even try to sugarcoat it. So because of gross public, like because the public was just grossly against this thing and it was so apparent, they weren't able to get it through. So what they're trying to do instead is they're just trying to tack on bits and pieces of it, and they're not going to stop at TikTok. They're going to try to get all that stuff through, and there's a big financial incentive for people like Mark Warner because they have domestic investments. The other big thing going on here is, the way they're trying to sell this. They're trying to sell it via, your privacy and this and that and the Chinese government. In reality, all of the domestic information of TikTok users in the United States, it is housed in the United States and it's housed in Singapore. None of it, I repeat, none of it is actually in China. So they're just straight up not telling you the truth. Whether you think it's okay or not okay aside, they're just straight up not giving you accurate information. That is just straight up not true. So in the TikTok hearing, which I covered live, it was a bunch of xenophobic nonsense. The official from TikTok, he straight up said, hey, we're going to make a deal. All the information stays in the US. You have full control over it. We don't touch it. It's not even in China, guys. But hey, we're going to give it all to you. And that's our deal. Does that sound good? And that Republican from Texas just said a bunch of, it was really disgusting the way he treated that person. It was just straight up rude, and rejected that and said, this is America, we're freedom. It was gross. So really this entire thing is just some nationalist xenophobic nonsense, and they're trying to use that as a shield to take away more of your rights online. That's really all they're trying to do. And this is such a hyper nationalistic country that they're getting away with it. There's a lot of people who, I don't think would really be okay with anything they're trying to do that are kind of falling for it. And they're like, well, the Chinese government, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying that. Whoa. Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
There's an emergency alert going on.
Oh, that's what it's like.
No action is needed on my part. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. But when it's an emergency alert, I guess it goes off anyway. No, actually, they told me I don't have to do anything. Oh, it's just a test. It's a straight up test.
A test?
Yeah.
I didn't get one. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they do everywhere all at once. Yeah, but I guess the Los Angeles area they're doing it. But yeah, so that's really what this is all about. This is just about the financial incentives of people like Mark Warner. And just, like they don't like the fact that people are seeing what's really going on. They can't control the war narrative that is easily. So, and if they really were concerned about our privacy, again, all the BS. Oh, someone else got one in SoCal. I saw in the chat, someone else got a SoCal notification. But if they were really concerned about our privacy, Jay, they would just pass a data privacy bill. But they don't do that. Why don't they do that? Because that would hurt the pocketbooks of the domestic people who lobby them so hard. The Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, the Elon Musks of the world. That's why they don't do that. This isn't about your privacy. It never was about your privacy. And by the way, another thing that hearing revealed, look, I'm not saying there aren't privacy concerns around TikTok. Of course there are. But you know what's even worse? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So if you have a problem with TikTok, but not any of those, you're being propagandized, my friend, because the investigation revealed that Facebook and Instagram, Meta, Twitter, they're even worse with our privacy and information than TikTok is. They do more nefarious things. They openly admit they sell our data. We are the product. They know that. That's what made Mark Zuckerberg very rich. Yeah. So they're actually worse than TikTok, the way they use the algorithms and stuff.
Essentially, you can say that TikTok is actually safer than these American sites.
Yeah, technically it is. It technically is. So it's all, the way they're selling this is just a bunch of xenophobic nonsense. And what it comes down to is they don't want you to see anti-war content. They don't want you to be able to engage with, foreign entities in the software space, because that'll hurt the bottom lines of the Mark Warners. So it's all about just censorship and money.
Yeah, exactly. There was a video that I also wanted to share that really also sums it up as well. young lady. And of course, I'm using TikTok on purpose because I think it's really important that, we share videos from TikTok, because the thing is, like, even though, and yes, there's a potential ban, that's looming over the next year, but I think it's important that we utilize this app even more now. The reason being is because I want there to be more public outrage and outcry, so that, because it's more than just TikTok. This is potentially many different websites and apps that could be swept up along with this, and then this can go to different news organizations as well, that it may not be based in the United States. And that goes into my next segment later, what I talked about, how Israel just basically banned Al Jazeera. And so, what if the United States starts doing things like that? But that's one of the reasons why I also want to continue to share what they're saying on TikTok, because, it still needs to be utilized, because a lot of people are speaking out. Regular people like you and me are speaking out. Well, you're not regular, but
I'm pretty regular.
You're an exception to the rule.
All right, I don't know what that means, but
you have a talent, so you
have a talent. Listen to that smooth voice of yours.
Thank you.
I always love your voice, man. I'm envious of your voice. I wish I had the JB pipes.
Oh, thank you. I wish I had the ability to be able to, be a comedian like you, as well as
it's a decision away. They got open mic nights in Orlando.
Yeah. Don't put me on the spot, Ron.
All your listeners now are gonna be like, when are you doing stand up?
No.
Wanted to do it.
That takes a whole different. That takes somebody with chutzpah like you.
You got chutzpah, man. I mean, it's just. I mean, sometimes when people say that, they're like, "Man, I wish I could do stand up." I'm like, "What's stopping you?" If I decided tomorrow I wanted to be a carpenter, there's a lot of things that are stopping me. Like a lot of tools that I just don't know how to use, and I would really need to start at the beginning. But if you're like, man, I want to do stand up, like, all right, well, all that involves is just writing something, which clearly you know how to do, talking into a microphone, which clearly you know how to do. You're technically doing it right now, and just standing in front of people, which you can do. In fact, honestly, standing is optional. You can sit if you need to. So, it's nothing's in your way.
All right. Well, I'll give it some thought. So let's go into this. She breaks it down and packages it with a nice bow for us.
It's happening. Breaking news. TikTok sues U.S. government saying potential ban violates First Amendment. And baby, does it? TikTok is suing the United States government in an effort to stop enforcement of a bill passed last month that seeks to force the app's Chinese owner to sell the app or it will be banned. So the lawsuit was filed on Tuesday, and the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act violates constitutional protections of freedom of speech, and that is correct. They snuck that shit in real quick because they couldn't get it past the House the last time they put it up. We all know Biden was expecting this to happen after he signed this bill April 24th. I know they did not give TikTok any chance to defend themselves. TikTok further claims that the law violates the right to due process under the Fifth Amendment, sure does, and it is unconstitutional. This is a legislative act declaring a party guilty of a crime and imposing a punishment without a trial. Because, baby, we didn't get a chance to speak. Nobody got a chance to speak. It also says that they didn't give ByteDance enough time to even fix the problem that they quote unquote says that was there, which we all know wasn't. We got more problems.
That's an interesting point, though, right, Ron? Because the thing is like there hasn't been no trial for this.
Right. Well, and also, she brings up the other way they're selling this, other than just relying on, the xenophobia of people, is they're saying, well, we're technically not banning TikTok. We're just saying they need to sell it. They need to sell it to a different company. They can't have it. But what that actually takes, like something of that scale, even having a potential buyer, That's just a ridiculous ask, and they know how ridiculous that ask is. It'd be like if you said to me like, "Hey, Ron, I really wanna, I'd love to have you on my show, but I can only do it if you give me $1 million." And I'm like, I feel like you're not letting me on your show, which you don't
Yeah,
no, I'm
yeah.
not trying. It's just if you don't give me $1 million, you're banned from my show. Well, I don't have $1 million, Jay. I mean, that's like what it's the equivalent of. Asking them to just randomly sell something in that context to a buyer. It's like asking a regular person for some obscene amount of money they don't have or something. Like it's just ridiculous. So yeah, that's when she brings that up. That's a very good point.
Yeah, and on top of that, you're really trying to force the sale of an app that has over just almost shy of 150 million users in the United States. Just to let you guys know, there's about 330 million people in this country, meaning almost half of the United States uses TikTok.
Yeah,
Half
I mean,
the country.
and let's just talk about just an aside here. How freaking politically tone deaf is it to try to do something like this just months before an election? It's absolutely remarkable. I mean, there's I don't know what exactly is going to happen in November. Like I think it's still so hard to predict because cycles shift like by the hour these days. But man, if Biden loses, do not blame leftists because this guy is doing everything he freaking can to beat himself. Although it could be argued so is the other guy. But wow.
I mean, okay, so because I also wanted to touch on that. As far as Joe Biden's concerned, I personally think his goose is cooked. It's just that's just the way it is. He's died, fried, and laid to the side. That's how I see it.
I think if the election was held today, abso-freaking-lutely. But
Yeah.
November is a while from now, and it's, I mean, dude, we live in the United States of amnesia. Like if it was more than 48 hours ago, you're rolling the dice whether it'll have any effect or not. That's just the reality. I mean, a lot of the people who vote in this country, they're not like you and me. They're not like consuming a bunch of news all the time, and they're like policy geeks and political geeks. Like most people aren't that. So, and I'm not saying they're like dumb or anything like that. I'm not implying that. I'm just implying like they're just gonna, the most prominent cycle is what's gonna be is going to dictate the results, because in 2020 I thought for sure Trump was going to win. It was Trump's to lose. But then he just mishandled so many things up until the last minute that people were they're like, okay, we got to just get this guy out of here. So I think if the election were held in May of 2020, Trump for sure would have won. I think if the election were held in September of 2020, Trump for sure would have won. But in those last couple months, things just really shifted. And you had people that, normally didn't vote that were like, we can't, this guy, we don't even know what the other guy's deal is, but this guy has got to get out of here. That's why, like, in the end, a freaking stale ham sandwich would have beat Donald Trump. And that wasn't the case. I mean, in September I was saying Trump's for sure going to win. So now I'm just like, man, with the amount of time that's left, it's impossible to make a prediction. I will say if the election were held today, right now, Trump wins in a landslide likely. But dude, a lot of stuff could happen until November.
Yeah, I mean, this is just to give us some context for what you're saying. This is out of Real Clear Politics 2024 general election, Trump versus Biden. The RCP average has Trump at plus 1.2 percentage points. And this is as of 2 days ago on the 5th. So, I mean, to be honest with you, Trump, at the very least, in my opinion, would eke out a win. It also shows this day in history on May 7th of 2020, Biden was leading Trump by over 5 points. And then in 2016, Clinton was, beating Trump by 6.5 points. So it's kind of up in the air right now. I still do think that because, and this is just to go to your point, yes, not as many people are as attuned to politically what's going on as you or I, but I think they're more attuned now than where they were 2 or 3 years ago because of apps like TikTok, because so many people, especially a lot more young people, are more well informed because they're not getting their information from the corporate media. Now they're getting information from people like you who, gives news from a dude on the beach, right? They give, media, they get it from people like me, RBN, you got Lee Camp, you got the guys over at Gray Zone. You got so many different people that are independent now. So
right.
I feel like it's still, I feel like there's a larger chance of Trump winning versus a equal chance of either. Does that make any sense?
No, man, that's totally fair. And again, if the election were held right now, I completely agree with you. I just feel like come November, I mean, there could be, I mean, also we live in an era of sound bites. I mean, yeah, there's more media out there, more people are engaged. A lot of young people are super engaged, like Gen Z is super plugged in. But I don't think they're not gonna go. I mean, it'll be interesting because I think a lot of Gen Z, they're really put off by Biden, but they're not into Trump though. Like a lot of them are, like a lot of them, I think they're either going to go third party or they're going to stay home. I mean, and in some ways it's interesting to see because I feel like this generation is the first generation that at their young age has a much more comprehensive understanding of power. And when I say power, I don't mean like military power. I mean like building grassroots power. They have a better understanding. I mean, that's why you see these a 27-year-old BLM activist getting elected to the city council. I mean, you're seeing, here in Los Angeles, we had a leftist controller who was active with the Green Party get elected controller. A lot of his campaign was run by people who weren't old enough to have a beer at his celebration party. You know what I mean? And that is something that really does give me hope. I feel like they have a different, and look at what's going on. They sure as hell see the importance of a protest. And they sure as hell see the importance of a union. It's young people that were making the Starbucks union efforts happen. It's or a lot of young people, rather. It wasn't all, but a lot of young people were behind that. It's young people on the campuses right now. So I feel like they have a different alignment of what power means, where they're sort of like, they're off put by seeing these two, geriatric corporatists, like fighting to the bottom to get in the White House. Which, by the way, it is quite literally a fight to the bottom. The one thing I think Trump and Biden have in common, both are going up against the only person they might be able to beat.
Yeah. It's deeply interesting to say the least. And I also want to share this as well, because apps like TikTok are also available in places like Israel, right? Because Israel has TikTok, they use TikTok too. But what they aren't counting on is that there's a lot of Israelis that are now actually going up against basically their own government. They're saying a lot. This is from Canthan 2030, says Tel Aviv protests tonight, end the war, hostage release, no to Rafah invasion, and Netanyahu must go. This is another reason why they want to ban apps like TikTok as well. That says BB Escobar. So they're comparing Benjamin Netanyahu to Pablo Escobar, who was, if anybody doesn't know who he was a drug kingpin in Colombia. And so that's who they're comparing Bibi Netanyahu to. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. And look, they really don't want people. Oh, sorry, is it playing?
No.
Oh.
I can still play it while you're talking.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, look, they really don't want people to see this kind of thing because, we all know like the oldest propaganda tool they use. Hey, if you're against the genocide that the Israeli government is committing with the help of the American government, you're anti-Semitic, which, we all know how ridiculous that is. But that's still what they try to use. So when you're showing stuff where it's like, no, look, these are Israelis are against what their government is doing, just like Americans are against what their government does. It's not some monolithic thing. That's a really, just lazy smear that you're trying to pull off there. And also, that's been really aided domestically by organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace.
Yeah.
I always like to bring up when people say that. Look, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The synagogue in my community is the synagogue that had that shooting a couple years back. And my parents, I have Jewish people in my family. My parents lost friends in that shooting. So in that shooting, that was an anti-Semitic action. And if you go to that synagogue today, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see a sign calling for a ceasefire.
Wow.
So I'm like, you're gonna go up to the people at that synagogue, tell them they're anti-Semitic, tell those Jewish people who had an anti-Semitic shooting where some of them got killed that they're anti-Semitic because they want a ceasefire. Good luck with that. Guys? Good luck with that.
Yeah, like for instance, these guys that are basically wearing, Palestinian themed yarmulkes, these Jewish people who are literally supporting Palestine, so it's like, are you guys going to call them anti-Semitic when they are practicing faithfully their religion and also calling for a ceasefire and really showing us what Judaism is all about peace, community, acceptance, and whatnot. And so I think this is the beautiful part, especially about the anti-Zionist, anti-imperialist Jewish voices that have been speaking out on this as well, because as far as what's been going on in these college campuses, I mean, dare I say, I can speak for both of us when I say both of us are extremely hopeful.
Absolutely. The other side to it, I mean, it is so freaking inspiring to see these young people, and it does make me so hopeful. The other side to it that I think we both would also be in agreement on is, it's so hard to watch what the cops are doing and just how they're brutalizing these protesters. I went to Indiana University, and that is one of the universities that's been making the news a lot. They did a walkout demanding that the president resign. And when I was there, we protested the Iraq war every week. And every week, at least once a week, I was out there on campus protesting the Iraq war. And they are protesting today in the same place that I stood some years ago. It's not important to mention a number how many years ago that was, but some years ago, JP. And it was really, I mean, to be honest, I got a little emotional because I saw the footage of the cops standing on top of the student union building with guns pointed at these students. And I never saw anything like that. And I could picture, I mean, I remember standing right there. I never looked on top of the student union and saw a cop with a gun. That didn't happen during our Iraq war protests. The cops would come and they'd be dicks, sure, but they never stood there with guns pointed at people, the way they did back at the Vietnam protests, which, by the way, this is something eerie. A member of my family knew and was friends with Alison Krauss. And Alison Krauss is one of the, she was one of the people shot at Kent State. This cousin is significantly older than me. But yeah, he went to a dance with her. They were friends. She grew up near where I did. And I'm going to see him this weekend because one of our family members is getting married in Southern California. So I'm going to see him this weekend. And it'll be kind of weird just seeing him and realizing, yeah, like you remember what it was like for Vietnam. I remember what it was like for Iraq. And here we see this new generation, protesting the wars and the genocide. And in some ways, that's very encouraging that people will not stop beating the drums for peace. But in some ways, man, isn't that frustrating that we still got to be out there? That the U.S. is still this imperialist monster. So it's there's a lot of kind of different emotions going on there that I feel like a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, and one of the things that also I think really ushered this student protest was that so many students are locked in. And so for, just like what you were talking about, what Mitt Romney was saying, that it was really, to him, it was like the narrative. And it's like, I asked this to Fiorella Isabel a few weeks back. I would like to get your opinion. Has Israel lost the information war? And if so, how severe do you say that the war is lost? Like, how severe is the loss, in your opinion?
I think, yes, they have lost the information war. I mean that they've been playing, and by they I don't mean just Israel. I mean the entire war machine, the U.S. government, the Israeli government. I mean, they're all in cahoots. I think they've definitely lost the information war because people are siding with the protesters and they're demanding ceasefires and they're seeing through all the propaganda tactics. I mean, I know Rome says this a bunch, how the U.S. is the most propagandized nation in the world. And I feel like I haven't been to enough countries to say that that's for sure the case. But what I will say is the U.S. is by far the most war propagandized nation I've ever been to. And if there is a nation out there more war propagandized than the United States, I don't want to ever go there. So if it does exist, I don't want to ever go there, wherever it is. And I've never been to one anywhere close to as war propagandized as us. You have Western war propaganda elsewhere. It's not like it's just the U.S., but no one has it turned up to 11 the way we do. Yet despite that, you see all this civil unrest against the war. So yeah, I think they have completely lost the information war. I think history will not smile fondly on, the John Fettermans of the world in this issue. It's going to smile fondly on the protesters the same way we reflect back on the Iraq War and the Vietnam War. It's almost like there's a trend where if you're for these wars, you're on the wrong side every time. Yeah. I don't know. I can't help but notice. But notice there seems to be a pretty big consistency where, when you go from Vietnam to present, if you're for our wars, you're on the wrong side of it. Isn't that weird?
It's like, duh, like, come on, man. Like, and the funny part is, you get people, you get some people who are against the protests that are going on in college campuses. And I'm like, okay, but we protest the Vietnam War on college campuses. We protest the Iraq War on college campuses. And the thing is, like, it seems like each time those college campus protests were happening, they were on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And, I'll put it this way. When you have people who are protesting this war and the other side that's defending the war efforts that are going on, when you have them emitting racist tropes and giving, and making fun of, Black people who are also trying to.
Did you see that old Miss stuff?
Yeah.
That was disgusting. It broke your heart. I mean, especially like we're talking about all the young people. To see those young people doing that was, God. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but God, that was so hard to see.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really good point, because the thing is like, I put it this way: if you are on the side that makes racist tropes towards people, and then you're making these racist tropes, if they're on the same side as you and they're calling themselves condemning you, you may want to rethink. Because the reason why is because there was this young man that went to the Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. He made monkey noises at a black woman. Well, he was just kicked out of his fraternity. I'm not sure if you saw this.
Yeah, I did see this actually.
Yeah. So it says Phi Delta Theta announces removal today. The University of Mississippi, NAACP, called on University of Mississippi to expel Phi Delta Theta member J.P. Staples. He's the young man that was actually he did this against this black woman. So he was making monkey noises at a black woman when she was protesting the genocide in Gaza. So that's the black woman that they are making monkey noises at, and this is at the University of Mississippi.
Yeah.
So if you guys see, I'm not sure if that actually showed, because I don't know, my computer froze for a second.
Yeah, it's painful to watch. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it already, but yeah, they were making monkey sounds and monkey noises at her, and that was just so.
Yeah,
that was brutal to watch, and I guess that guy is a pretty big scumbag. Like he's like a legit Nazi, I think, right? Like he had like some tweets praising Hitler and whatnot, and
well, he doubled down. And so, and from what I can tell, I think he put his tweets on protected now because it's getting too much.
Yeah, I heard he deleted his account. I'm not sure, but yeah, I saw some of the headlines of like, what a gross way to conduct yourself. And apparently it runs in his family too. They kind of did a deep dive on this guy, and he comes from
went after his dad.
Yeah, he comes from a legacy of racist douchebags.
Yeah. So unfortunately, he just ruined his future, by being that way. But my point is that if you have people like that are on your side when it comes to what's going on in Israel,
you might want to rethink. Yeah.
You might want to rethink, and so. Yeah, so I think it's really important that we also take that into consideration.
I was watching some war footage. I was watching some protest footage yesterday, and there was this one guy who came up and he was being very loud and belligerent, and it wasn't clear like what exactly he was for, but he started dropping, like homophobic slurs and racial slurs. They weren't even directed at anyone specific. Like it was unclear what this guy's deal was. But a lot of the protesters are like, we don't really, we're not co-signing what you're all about. And then finally, you found out, this dude is he started praising the cops. He started thanking the cops. So he was against the protest. He was, to your point, the guy dropping a bunch of slurs was, against the protesters and for the cops. Surprise, surprise. And it was kind of funny because it's like even the cops sort of were just like, oh God, don't acknowledge this dude.
Like, even the cops are like,
even the cops are like, we don't really want to give that high five back. But yeah.
Oh geez, man. Yeah. So I think that's deeply important that we, take into context exactly what's going on. And I'm so happy that the kids are going to be all right. And Ron, just as I went over time. Sorry about that.
No problem. It's always fun to talk to you.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is what do you have coming up next? I know you have your film coming up next. soon, and I hope that it comes with an overwhelming release and notoriety. I'm hoping for Avengers in-game numbers. But tell me what do you have coming up?
So June 8th is the next screening of my movie. We've been doing events where we're doing a short stand-up show, a screening, and then a Q&A after.
June 8th?
So yeah, June 8th in Idlewild, California. That's in the Los Angeles area. It's a cool little mountain town. They got a cool indie theater scene. So yeah, anyone in the SoCal area, I know some of you are there because you got the same emergency alert that I did. If you feel like coming up to Idlewild June 8th, please do. You can get tickets at romplacone.com. It's a show screening and Q&A. I'm going to be in England in September. Don't have all the details available yet, but we're going to be doing an event in London on September 21st, Morecambe on September 26th, and Sheffield the 27th and 28th of September. So if you have any listeners over in the UK, I will be in England in September. And then, of course, in the meantime, we're working on just trying to get digital distribution for the film itself. Like usually when you do an indie film, you start doing festivals and some screenings if you're going to do them. I've done a couple screenings, done a couple festivals, still waiting to hear back from a bunch of them. And then simultaneously, you kind of look for proper distribution to get it distributed everywhere. So soon enough, it will be available everywhere. I know we're only doing screenings in so many places, so not everyone can catch it. But I do some virtual screenings occasionally where I do it over Zoom, and I just kind of, if you follow me online, I'll announce those, and then you can just, it's pretty informal where you just kind of like Venmo me a couple bucks if you're able, and I'll send you the link. And if you're not able, but you want to come anyway, just let me know and I'll send you the link anyway. You know, if you can give a few bucks, that's great. But if you can't, if you want to see the movie, I want you to see it. So yeah, but and soon enough, it'll be available everywhere for everybody. It'll be distributed as many places as possible. And for more information on all that, you can follow me, romplacone.com, at Romplacone on Twitter, Romplacone on YouTube, Romplacone on Substack. I make it easy. Romplacone on all the platforms, and I'm on all of them. I'm on TikTok. I'm not very good at it, but I'm on it. Romplacone on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky. Yeah. Romplacone in the
that's a lot of platforms.
In the phone book. I'm still in the yellow pages. It's just Romplacone. I'm the only one. Just
Are you in the white pages too?
Maybe. I don't know. Do they don't print those anymore?
I think we just showed our age by talking about the yellow pages.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some people are like, what does that refer to?
Yeah.
Was that what happened? That was MySpace before MySpace. That was the pre-AIM thing.
Yep. You want to find out what businesses and where people were, that's all you got to do is go there.
Yeah. It used to be a really cool resource, actually. Anyway, yeah, we're dating ourselves.
Yeah. And and you're also still doing shows on Status Quo as well, right?
Yeah, I occasionally guest host there and do some programming for them, you know, when Jordan wants me to. So yeah, I do some stuff over there. And I have a new podcast as well, at least new since the last time I've been on your show. It's called 1000 with Ron Placone. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts, and I drop clips online. But the concept is I'm interviewing 1,000 different people who have piqued my interest in some way. So I'll be having you on at some point for sure. I'll definitely, you're on the list. But yeah, I mean, we've had everything. There's been a lot of political guests. Like I've had Jill Stein on the show. I've had, who else has done this show? Cory Doctorow's done it. So there's a lot of tech policy wongs because I'm into that. And then I've interviewed a lot of musicians. Jello Biafra has done the show. I've interviewed other comedians. I've interviewed mental health professionals. Paul Gilmartin was my guest this week. He's a comedian and host of the Mental Illness Happy Hour. So it's a little bit different than Get Your News On with Ron, where instead of me curating news that I think is important, I'm curating people who I find to be very important. Some of them are in the public spotlight. Some of them aren't. They just have really interesting information to share. I did an episode with Artsy Marxist where she talked about her art and how she left the United States for Mexico. So yeah, it's just a lot of that. It's sort of broad yet specific at the same time because it's just like stuff I find interesting. But if you're into lefty politics, punk rock music, indie film, Ren Fair culture. If you're into any and all that stuff, you're going to love this podcast and you're going to love the people I've talked to a professional busker out of Italy. It's a cool show. And 1000 with Ron Placone, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. The Italian stallion, Ron Placone. Thank you so very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right. Take care. I'll talk to you in the interwebs. Bye.
All right, man. Peace.
All right. All righty then. Now, thank you so very much to Ron Placone for being on with me to discuss all things internet. It's always a pleasure to have him on. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. It's always a fun time to have Ron Placone on. It's always fun, but yet informative. You know how you have some of those friends where you guys can talk about some deep stuff, but then at the same time, you guys can also joke around. Yeah, those are some good times. Good times. So, if you guys have not already, go ahead and give the stream a like. Wait, hold on. Yeah, like I almost did a loser snipe. Sorry, but give the stream a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. And thank you so much in advance. Now. Wait, and by the way, some of y'all said that I look like Dr. Umar Johnson. Do I really look like him? Because some of my colleagues, like, okay, so I asked Savvy Sabs, right? I was like, do I look like Dr. Umar Johnson? She was like, hell no. So I got that opinion from her. Rome said that I look like a better version of Dr. Umar Johnson. So I don't know. If anybody else from RBN is watching, please let me know. But I guess I can see it, but the thing is, like, not all of us look the same. Just because we black and just because we got a beard doesn't mean that we look the same. Anywho, so go ahead and give a like to the stream. And also, if you guys have not, you guys can go to jaybefaunt.substack.com. That gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. You guys have that there. And did you guys know I also have a shop? Yeah, I got a shop. I got a merch store. So if you guys would like to, you guys can go to Bonfire and just search the Jaybefaunt store. I have, hats, shirts, mugs, things like that on there if you guys would like to. So yeah, you guys have that there too. All right, so I'm going to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon real quick before we get into our next segment and before we get to talk to the people in the chat. Just want to give a shout out to all of you because you guys make this possible. Here we go again, over and over again. Here we go. The closer I get to you, the more you make me see. Okay, I'm not going to make your ears bleed. Okay, thank you to the patrons on Patreon, also people on Coffee, as well as people who send me anything through PayPal. We have the Mega Jaybefaunters. Thank you so very much. Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters, Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And thank you so very much to all of you for being members on the channel. For without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. By the way, in addition to and furthermore, if you would like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal because this channel is demonetized. So thank you so very much. Literally, I am funded by the people 100%. So thank you so very much to all of you and to any future new patron. Thank you very much in advance. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it. So let's go to the chat. Let me check Rumble real quick just to see if I have anybody in the chats there. I don't get too many. Yes, I do. Perfect. All right. So I still got to figure out how to get Rumble chats on StreamYard. So please bear with me, guys. But here we go here. All right, we got Shadow Hobbs says, watching from the start on, but had not heard net neutrality was restored a week and a half ago. Amazing W for the peoples. Yes, Shadow Hob. Thank you so very much for that. It is deeply important that we keep net neutrality as much as possible because we need our privacy. That is an important issue that we must keep in mind when it comes to what we're doing as far as, our freedom of speech. Just like what we were talking about in regards to TikTok, our freedoms are deeply important to keep in mind. Whether it's digital rights, physical rights, that all needs to be kept in place. And it's just, our government is constantly trying to undermine that for the sake of corporate power. That's really it. That's all. So let's go to the Rockfin chat. I'll make sure I get this. So I got the Rumble, got the Rockfin. Ooh, okay. So thank you very much for the tip on Rockfin. Roger Meadows says, Ron, what's up? Long time no talk. You don't do your X spaces no more? You don't want to kick it with the family no more? See that, Jay? Ron got to win net neutrality, and he goes Hollywood on us and doesn't want to associate with us little peeps no more. He said, effing with you. Ron, we can't depend on the federal government. This wasn't a law, but an administrative move. Time we start having stationalized broadband while giving municipalities the option to municipalize, coupled with universal access, but makes the speed, reliability, performance, and quality on par with Japan's, who's experimenting with petabits per second. Ooh, that's high. He said, Jay, education for you, petabits per second is kilo thousand, mega million, giga billions, tera trillions, peta quadrillion. Private internet service providers can offer services beyond access, especially for organizations, businesses, institutions, etc., like cybersecurity, management, maintenance, filtering by being a sub-internet service provider of public internet service providers, where private networks are used by them. That's called an intranet. Okay. In regards to voter turnout, both of you are right, even though you're saying opposite. Traditionally, the younger generation voter turnout is low, which is one reason why they never get paid attention to. Exact opposite with older generation who just want to know about the Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare check. They show up at town halls. The reason? Because they're retired, and the younger is either doing their people stuff, living their lives, living the single free life in their 20s, married and raising kids in their 30s and 40s, but all of them are working. They don't have time to be going to these town hall meetings. However, like you said, Jay, things are changing, and it's not because of social media, but the smartphone. Remember, it's not until internet computing became mobile that caused activism to start up. And yes, just to let everybody know, when it comes to tech, information technology, Roger is educated on information technology. I think, you were in the industry for IT as well. So you have especially a deep understanding of this, way deeper than I do. So it says that caused activism to start up. Remember the iPhone, first smartphone in 2007, social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, what years before that, but you couldn't stream things like that because you didn't have smartphones, which begs the question, does technology shape the culture? Is this culture follow technology? What shapes this is as what was shown on the segment that Crystal and Sagar did on Breaking Points last week, where it showed a graph of the source of media consumed by different generations. show how we live in different worlds, as opposed to when TV news ruled, we all watched and came away with different opinions. Pete DM for Graph. Okay. All right. Thank you so very much for that, Roger. I will peek the DM because you said so. Roger, you be setting me up, bro. Woo. Okay. Hang on. I'm trying to look for wait. Where is that? That's about foreign. Okay. I think you mean the foreign policy aspect of it. Okay. Let's go here. All right. So this is the first one. Says, who do you most trust to handle foreign policy on the Israel-Palestine conflict? I think this is what you were referring to, Roger. It says Joe Biden is 31%, Donald Trump is 35%, Robert RFK Jr. is 9%, and don't know is 25%. Yeah, I think that 25% of don't know really is pretty indicative. I mean, because the don't knows are higher than RFK Jr. Really, that's a quarter of people. That's a quarter of people who were polled that basically said they didn't know. I think if you added other options, for instance, like Dr. Joe Stein, Dr. Cornel West, at least those two, and if you also wanted to include Claudia de la Cruz in there too, that probably would shift the 25%. Says, who do you most trust to handle foreign policy on Israel-Palestine conflict? So red is Joe Biden, green is Donald Trump, blue is RFK Jr., and yellow is I don't know. And 18 to 29-year-olds, the highest percentage is 36%. And one thing I think this is indicative is that Breaking Points also has a large right-wing audience too. That's something a lot of people don't realize, is that Breaking Points does have a significant amount of people, because Sagar, brings over a lot of right-wing people. So that's one of the reasons why Trump is seen to be favored more in the handling of the Israel-Palestine conflict. But I think it's also really important that you have the greatest number of people polled at 36% saying they don't know, because truth be told, they do not trust neither Biden nor Trump, with the Israel-Palestine conflict, which is pretty interesting. 13 to 49-year-olds, then that shifts where Trump is still ahead, right? And then 50 to 64-year-olds is almost evenly matched between Trump and Biden. And then everybody over the age of 65, which is the elderly, it is still Trump over Biden, but it's still pretty much almost a dead heat. So when it comes to this, I also attribute it to being how, you got a lot of older people are conditioned to think that Israel, for all intents and purposes, is just, positive. It's just they have some issues, when in reality, a lot of us younger, we've studied the history and we're like, no, this is a settler colonial project, and it needs to stop being a settler colonial project altogether. So this one says, how do you feel about Joe Biden's handling of the Israel-Palestine conflict? I think we just saw this. This is a different one. Hang on. Oh, how do you feel about Joe Biden's handling? Well, of course. So red is doing well. Green is neither well nor badly. Blue is doing badly. And yellow is I don't know. Pretty much everybody thinks he's doing it horribly. Everybody. And it goes up into doing well the older they get, but it's still at like even at the most at this 65 and up, it's about a third of people think that he's doing well, where versus 50%, basically 50% are thinking that he's doing badly. So it's just, yeah, it's not good for Joe Biden. Are you more or less likely to support the candidate that strongly supports Israel? More likely is 35%. Doesn't matter, it's 31%. Less likely is 18%. Don't know is 16%. I'm starting to think that 18 to 32-year-olds really, I'm starting to think that a lot of them weren't really in this poll. I think the most people who are probably polled are probably people around my age, mostly millennials. And by millennials, I say right-wing millennials. That's what it feels like. Are you more or less likely to support a candidate that strongly supports Israel? Oh, yeah, I think I just read that. Wait. Oh, yeah, this is a different one. Okay. So, yeah. This is interesting. So, yeah, thank you so much for this, Roger. I appreciate it. But, yeah. All right. So, let's go to the rest of the chat. Let me just check this real quick. Oh. He said, Roger said that wasn't the graph that he actually wanted me to see. Sorry, Raj. See that? He said, damn, that wasn't the graph I wanted to send you. My bad. It looks so much like the other. Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I'll go to the rest of the chat and then I'll check back in just to see if, the one that you want me to see. But let's go to the rest of this chat. Saying hello to everybody. Arif says Reaganism kills. Absolutely. Terry Connolly says good afternoon, comrades. Good afternoon to you, Terry. Jacqueline says, hey, Jaybefaunt, where's everyone? Perhaps some people are still at work. Yes, unfortunately, because we live in a system where people absolutely have to work in order to live, whereas we actually make enough societally in order for everybody to have their material needs met. Not saying that they don't have to work. It's just that they shouldn't have to work as much because people actually are working way more than what they should. We are overproductive as a country anyway. Hillier Grigor says, hit the like on your way in. Yes, thank you so very much. And Terry Connolly says, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much, Terry Connolly. Kevin says, what's up, chat? What is up with you, Kevin? Good to see you. Jackie says, lumber, building trades, plumbing, maintenance, and municipal systems to support that industry is it. Thank you so very much. Wadi's in the chat saying, hey, everybody. Wadi, it was so good to see you in the chat on Danny Haifong. It's always good. Wadi, you everywhere, though. It's a good thing to see you everywhere, but you everywhere. You be getting around. Myra says, hi to Jacqueline. Good to see you. Kevin says hello to Jacqueline. Mr. Meepsor says, there's no longer a red line. There is no longer a quiet part. Yes, they're really willing to say whatever they want to out loud, and, critics be damned. We need critical thinking, says meow. Yes. Oh, yes. Meow. All right. Mikael says, hey, guys. What's up, Ron? Good to see you. You get your news on with Ron is crying out for some color, baby. Oh, is it because I'm wearing orange? I'm wearing orange. It's one of my favorite colors. Black Beauty Griffin says, Ron, song time. Yes. Good to see you. Traveler's Wolf says, Ron. Yes. Roger Meadows says, did TikTok ban pass the Senate? Yes, it did. They snuck it in an appropriations bill, a bill, to fund Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Ghostnet says, unfortunately, many people fell for the commercialization as some form of progress for the human race and think of it as a benevolent tool. Wish I could get everyone the truth. Yep. Bryce coming in saying, JB, Ron, sup, y'all? Good to see you in here. Rando Online says, those Israelis care more about saving Israel than not committing genocide. This might be a good thing for us, but they are doing it for selfish reasons. I get to a point where even if it's for selfish reasons, I think of it as a bit of a win. My thing is, though, if you are Israeli and you're starting to see Zionism and the apartheid and what's going on in Gaza and the illegal settlements that's happening, my thing is, why are you still living there? If you see this as wrong, why haven't you moved back? You know, it's like I don't know. It's not like you're that far removed, because Israel is, only been around for 75 years. So a lot of people have moved there. They have dual citizenship, right? I don't know. It just feels like if you're in a house that's stolen, then, but you had, you weren't the one that initially stole the house, but you're still living there. Why are you still there? Yeah. Just do it before it goes a long time, like here in the United States, because we are on occupied land here too. John Kemper, Blue Marble says, peace, love, and solidarity. Good to see you, Blue Marble. Kevin says they are moving the goalposts on anti-Semitism. Yeah, they definitely are. They don't even want to consider Palestinian Semites anymore, even though they are, which is weird. Natalie says, hey, I caught the live stream. Whoop, good to see you. All One Same says, peace. Good to see you, All One Same. I also saw you in the Danny Hyphon chat too. Good to see you. OBE Direct says, just tuning in and started from the beginning of JB Invoke cameo. Ow! I can feel it when you walk. Even when you talk, it takes over me. Okay. Adam Charlton says, see what? And Rando Online says, when people do that, it shows how childish and simple-minded they are, talking about the racist acts that person did, actually. Sean Miller says, that's what she said. Oh, gosh. You guys are funny. Retro Gamer says, yep. KYE YouTube getting they're getting worse. Okay. Holly Horn, good to see you. Nice to have you in the chat too. And Dan says, keep going, JB. Thank you so very much. So I went a little long on this because I also wanted to give Roger some time to bring up the graph. Did he? Ron? I'm sorry, not Ron. Roger. Sorry, you guys both, your first name starts with an R. Not yet. He's going to look for it. Okay. All right. All right. So let's get to it. I'll get to that after this segment, Roger. But what are we talking about next? Well, Al Jazeera is banned. In democracy, freedom of speech and freedom of the press is an integral part of the democratic process. If you aren't free to speak your mind, or if the press isn't free to share and gather information, then there is essentially no democracy. Israel has shown its true colors not only in committing genocide in Gaza, but implementing apartheid conditions in the West Bank. But it's now shutting down and banning international news organizations from covering their war crimes. Al Jazeera has been banned from Israel in Gaza. Let's get into the story and let's share. Well, here it is, folks. Israel bans Al Jazeera. What does it mean and what happens next? Let's get into it. The blurb says Al Jazeera says it will pursue available legal channels to protect its journalists from Israel's slanderous shutdown. It says Israel cabinet unanimously voted to shut down Al Jazeera in the country on Sunday, immediately ordering the closure of its offices and a ban on the company's broadcasts. The decision was announced by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on X, formerly known as Twitter. Hours later, Israel's communications minister Shlomo Kari published footage on X showing Israeli authorities, specifically inspectors from the Ministry of Communications, backed by the police, raiding the Al Jazeera office in East Jerusalem and confiscating the channel's equipment. This has got to be scary. Because imagine either people like myself, the Gray Zone, or any other news outlet out there where you cover the news on the ground and the police show up with government officials to take your laptops, your cameras, your streaming equipment, everything, and says that you're no longer allowed to report on the news in this country, in this region. Imagine that happening here. Let's continue. So it says, why did Israel shut down Al Jazeera? The shutdown comes a month after Israel's parliament, the Knesset, passed a law on April 1st that allowed Israel to temporarily shut down foreign media outlets, including Al Jazeera, if it deems them a threat to security. In a previously reported report, Al Jazeera's Imran Khan, reporting from occupied East Jerusalem, explained the terms of the law further. Based on the law, the Al Jazeera website is banned in Israel, including anything that has the option of entering or accessing the website, even passwords that are needed, whether they are paid or not, and whether it's stored on Israeli servers or outside of Israel. It says additionally, the Al Jazeera television channel is completely banned in Israel. Within the country, cable providers now show a message that the network is prohibited from the air. Though in East Jerusalem, some people have told Al Jazeera that they could still access the channel on television as of Monday afternoon, which was yesterday. Khan added that the internet access provider that hosts Al Jazeera.net is also in danger of being fined if they host the website. Akiva Eldar, the political analyst and contributor to the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, told Al Jazeera that the shutdown is, quote, a very populistic move to feed the beast of the public opinion that is very disappointed from the conduct of the government in Gaza and in the international arena, end quote. Adding to this also to please the partners from the radical right. Netanyahu's government relies on support from a band of far-right parties and leaders, many of them like Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir, holding key positions in the cabinet. So it says Kari's office said Al Jazeera has shut down for 45 days and the shutdown can be renewed in accordance with the law passed on April 1st. So as when the law passed, Netanyahu said he would act immediately in accordance with it to stop Al Jazeera's activity. However, the timing of the shutdown months later coincides with the crucial negotiations between Israel and Hamas on the war, mediated by Egypt and Qatar, where Al Jazeera has its headquarters. So this really is a hit on, dare I say, democracy. Because this is a journalist website. This is a news outlet. And so it's like, well, what threat to their security are they posing? What type of danger does Al Jazeera put upon Israel? Because all they're doing is reporting on the news. there was a video put out by Double Down News talking to one of the editors for Al Jazeera, and he was speaking about why Al Jazeera, not why, but some of the information that Al Jazeera had put out, and as to why they're doing what they're doing, because ultimately Al Jazeera is basically saying that the emperor has no clothes. And the person who says that, well, they're the ones who basically get targeted. So let me just share this really quick. I'm not going to share this entire video because it's kind of long. It's over 16 minutes. But let's get into this.
At Al Jazeera's investigative unit, we've conducted a forensic, meticulous examination of the events of October the 7th. We uncovered very, very real crimes committed by Hamas and others. But I think what was perhaps most significant were the crimes we discovered that did not happen. And it's hugely concerning that these revelations have been virtually entirely ignored by the Western press. What's extraordinary is the Israelis were aware of the plans. Hamas were actually training.
So I can't show that because, you know, unfortunately, that's what got my my channel demonetized in the first place. So I have to be very careful about that. Oop. Sorry, guys. This is the part that I dislike. You would think that if Twitter is owned by Elon Musk, it would work a lot more efficiently, but apparently not. Jeez Louise, this guy.
And it's hugely concerning that these revelations have been virtually entirely ignored by the Western press. What's extraordinary is the Israelis were aware of the plans. Hamas were actually.
So let's continue.
For dawn, spotters along the fence are reporting back to headquarters, and the head of Shin Bet and the head of military intelligence take this seriously enough that in the middle of the night.
So that's just some of it, but there's more. So what they basically explain in this, because I got to be very careful about some of the images on here, is that when it comes to what has happened, like they talk about how some people who were murdered on October 7th were not by Palestinian resistance. It was actually by friendly fire from Israel, from their Apache helicopters. They talk about how they basically debunked the story about the sexual assault that was happening on October 7th, basically saying that there was no credible evidence at all that sexual assault actually happened on October 7th. So they also bring that out because Israeli officials have been coming out and making these claims without any evidence at all. And then also the killing of babies and infants, the 40-headed babies put in ovens, things like that, there's no evidence whatsoever to support any of those claims as well. So Al Jazeera has actually been putting this out saying there's no evidence, right? Investigative reporting has been showing this. Israel doesn't like this because look, I'm going to put it to you like this. Just like it's basically like what Kendrick Lamar and Drake. It's basically, if you stop lying about me, I'll stop telling the truth about you. You know, so it's like, yeah, they're telling the truth about Israel, and Israel doesn't like it. And so it's like Israel keeps telling the lie And then Al Jazeera's like, nope. And they keep poking holes in their lies and going, nah, you guys are wrong on that one, on all these different points. And so if you're banning Al Jazeera, it also limits what the people, the Israelis, can actually see in regards to what their government is doing. Let me share this as well. Because I think this is also important. Because they don't want you to see what's going on the ground. Let's go here. Because Yanis Varoufakis, always butcher his last name. Yanis Varoufakis, I hope I said his name correctly, actually gave some thoughts about this as well. And I think this is important to take into context, especially as to why Israel is doing this. Let's go.
Israel's war on truth is climaxing. After having murdered around 100 journalists, many of them connected one way or the other to Al Jazeera.
First of all, let's stop there. Over 100 journalists, Palestinian journalists on the ground, have been killed. So first of all, if you're really dedicated to free speech and freedom of the press, you wouldn't have killed all those journalists on the ground. But they did. Two, if they were really actually dedicated to freedom of the press and free speech on the ground, because it's supposedly a democracy. It's supposed to be a democracy, and yet they shut down a news organization that is critical of their government. You know who else did that? Ukraine did that. Under Volodymyr Zelensky. He also did that as well. So it's important to take into context as to, if they are taking away the implements of free speech and freedom of the press, is it a democracy? I think that's an important question that we need to ask ourselves. Let's continue.
Yeah. Now, the Israeli regime is banning Israelis, citizens, residents, people under occupation, Bedouins, Palestinians, Jews, from watching Al Jazeera on their television screens or online. Why? Because they do not want. The regime does not want. The apartheid state, calling itself Israel, does not want Israelis to know what's happening in Gaza behind their backs, essentially. They do not want Israelis to have a look, a glimpse of the bodies of children, the starved youth, the starved elderly, the result of intentional starvation. They do not want any opportunity that Israelis may have to find out what the other side of the story might be. Lies and the repression of a highly balanced medium like Al Jazeera is instrumental and functional to the interests of a genocidal ethnic cleansing campaign of the kind that Israel is perpetrating in Gaza, but not just in Gaza, in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem as we speak. Meanwhile, the West's defense of Israel's brutality on the ground, but also brutality when it comes to murdering the truth, delivers the West to barbarism, especially the European Union, which is now banning eyewitnesses to the French Senate, which is banning our Palestine Congress in Berlin, which bans any sensible, rational discussion of how to combine, on the one hand, fighting against the scourge of anti-Semitism and fighting against the ethnic cleansing, apartheid policies, genocidal policies of Israel across the land. of ancient Palestine, Israel, Palestine. We need to rise up.
So this is really just a if what I said is true, that Israel is really just a tool of the West, because a lot of people have it reversed. They'll say, well, the West is really just a puppet of Israel. No, reverse it. Israel is a puppet of the West. And what they do in Israel is what they actually really want to do here. That's dangerous. Because ultimately, they don't want outlets like Al Jazeera. And yes, of course, Joe Biden came out and said, oh, well, we don't agree with this, blah, blah, blah. But that's like telling a teenage boy, I don't like you having a girl in your room alone. And yet you turn a blind eye whenever you see him close the door and lock it. You feel what I'm saying here? It's like, oh no, I don't like when you do this, and yet you keep allowing it to happen. So when it comes to the only democracy in the Middle East, as they like to call themselves, if you're stamping down dissent and investigative reporting that goes against your narrative, are you really a democracy? Also, because you have control of Gaza, because let's be real, Israel has control of Gaza. They literally have a caloric diet on the people of Gaza. They monitor, you can't even get chocolate in. You can't get cilantro in Gaza because Israel says, no, you can't. You can't even get a wedding dress. And so if you're literally controlling the food, water, fuel, and electricity that can come in and out, you essentially have power over them. And essentially, if they do not have all their rights that are recognized, just like every other Israeli, it's not a democracy. The United States wasn't a democracy when chattel slavery was still implemented, because all the people who are citizens were not considered to be human beings. So was the United States a democracy back then? No, because only certain people could vote. Right? So is Israel really a democracy? Because they're doing this? I think that's an important question for us to ask.
Because what is happening now is a harbinger of a clampdown on freedoms and on rights that we Europeans fought for centuries to grab, to establish, to gain. Let's rise up.
So of course, Giannis Giannis is, very right in that, is that we have to fight against this, this means to quell dissent, means to stop the sharing of important information that's coming out against outlets like Al Jazeera, because the problem is what's going on in Al Jazeera right now is just a microcosm of what corporate entities that really control our governments really want to do. Al Jazeera says Al Jazeera's equipment has been seized during a raid on the channel's office in occupied East Jerusalem, says Communications Minister Shlomo Kari. And so it's I think we need to look at, if they're going to do it over there, then they're going to try to implement that here. because really, what happens in Israel, America follows. Like, look at how they treat us in the United States by means of the police. The police are trained by IDF soldiers. And so, that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we monitor what they're doing there. And news outlets like Al Jazeera, what they're putting out, I think it's important too, because, you have many of us that look at them for, of course, every news outlet pretty much has a bias, but Al Jazeera's bias is not completely in line with settler colonial project known as Israel. And so you have people who are even in U.S. government that are also seeing this and also going up against or letting their voices be heard as them being against it. So this says first American diplomat to resign over U.S. support for Israeli genocide in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
I made it abundantly clear through daily reports of the ramifications of our messaging. Abundantly clear. I showed every day what was happening, what the reaction was. And I also was monitoring Arab social media and sharing with Washington the images that were going viral across Arab social media. And these, thank you as well, Amy, for amplifying the voices of the Palestinian families at the top of the hour. Those are things that sometimes Washington does not hear. But it is what the Arab public is consuming on a daily basis. And these pictures of dead children, of maimed toddlers, they're traumatizing. And my point back was, look at these images that people in this part of the world are consuming on a daily basis. There is an absolute disconnect with what people in the Arab world are seeing happening in Gaza and our talking points. The anger in the region is palpable, and it is traumatic. When people are consuming daily images of massacres, of people suffering, and yet they hear that the United States is willfully enabling it by continuing to send bombs, it makes people lose complete faith in the United States. And this is what was so painful to me as an American diplomat. I've worked for the last 18 years to strengthen ties between the United States and other countries, to advance US interests, to promote America's image. But this policy made it impossible. How can we talk about press freedom when we remain willfully silent about the killings of so many journalists? I mean, I personally worked to try to get a statement out on the killing of journalists in Gaza, and I was met with so much pushback. And I was so shocked at my own colleagues that would push back on that. It is a fundamental American value to be promoting freedom of press. We cannot have exceptions. We cannot have double standards.
And so people like that are listening to other news outlets that are not in line with the Zionist narrative. This is why Al Jazeera is also being targeted. And this is important. Look at what's going on the ground at colleges, campuses, over 120 different college campuses all over the nation here in the United States. And if you subdue or harm this, the support for Israel, and a means for divestment, that will essentially destroy the settler colonial project. And that's what they don't want. And so, like Ron Placone said earlier, that yes, the information war is lost. I think a lot of us on independent media, especially the left independent media, are saying that this information war, the narrative war, is over. Because, once you push the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't get it back in. And Israel knows this. And by extension, the Western governments know this. Now you got scholars saying this. And let's listen to this.
In this country and across the world, People have created systems that reserve the right to good health for some and not others. Leaders at this university have decided that divestment in solidarity with Ukraine is more moral and more urgent than divestment in solidarity with the Palestinian people of Gaza. We are witnessing the most well-documented genocide in human history on our cell phones. Every issue you came to SPH to dedicate your career towards: maternal health, infectious disease prevention, non-communicable illness, mental health, food security, healthcare systems, humanitarian aid, is at a point of crisis in Gaza. Who you are, what you look like, where you live, and how much money you have determines whether your right to a healthful life is respected or ignored. Public health is political.
And that is from a post from Jewish Voices for Peace. They shared that. That was from Jodi Ann Burry. She was commencement speaker. And so I think that's so important that, you have a lot of people speaking out, which is really also part of showing that the narrative war is over. Here's another post. Gentleman is the CEO of HIMS. Now, anybody who is a man knows of this company HIMS. They actually do medication for erectile dysfunction and things like that. Well, he also came out and supported Gaza. He said, moral courage is greater than college degree. Says, if you're currently protesting against the genocide of the Palestinian people and for your university's divestment from Israel, keep going. It's working. There are plenty of companies and CEOs eager to hire you regardless of university discipline. Apply here. So this is the CEO, Andrew Dunham, who's saying basically, look, if you guys are fighting against genocide and you guys get penalized by your university, not to worry, you have a job with us. If you're going to stand on the right side of history, even if you get penalized for it, we're going to stand behind you. So now you have a CEO coming out in front and saying, we got you. You have a career with us. Interesting. This is why they are afraid, right? This is why they do not want companies like Al Jazeera to be reporting on the news what's going on in Israel. There's another thing that I wanted to share. Yes. And this is from Asal Rad. And this also puts things into perspective as well. Asal Rad says, the fact that Israel banned Al Jazeera hours before beginning its assault on Rafah is not a coincidence. After everything we've seen in the last 7 months, imagine what they'll do when they think no one is watching. And that's the reason for the necessity for having a free press, because you always need somebody that is watching. The problem is that they do not want people to report on what's actually going on the ground. This is why Asal Rad said what she said. And yes, they did it right before they did their attack on Rafah. And as of right now, there's a massacre happening in Rafah that started Sunday. I think it was Sunday night, early Sunday morning. And so more innocent Palestinians are going to die. If not, many more have died already. More children. I have seen videos, children and people, doing chest compressions on little 1 and 2-year-old bodies. It's something that you shouldn't ever have to see. But it's happening again. And who's sharing that? A lot of it's independent media. We're grabbing from these accounts on Twitter and Instagram, and if they allow, from TikTok. And we're like, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what the corporate media is not showing you. And a lot of times the corporate media is also in the same pocket as the Israel lobby or, the Zionist powers. And as I showed you guys earlier, another thing that they do not want you to know, they do not want you to see, is that there are a ton of Jewish people who stand with Gaza, who are saying, not in our names, not anymore. We are not doing this. And you have Jewish people that literally stand with them. So this is not a Judaism thing. This is a Zionism thing. Religion has nothing to do with this. It is all about a political ideology of settler colonialism. And many of our Jewish siblings are not standing for it. So, what's going on with Al Jazeera, I hope that they can reverse this so that they can, do more on the ground reporting to share. I have literally videos right in front of me that I'm looking at of babies in diapers that are being treated because of the bombings that they've been enduring in Rafah. And they are about to lead a ground invasion in Rafah. Unfortunately, I can't share these images on YouTube because of policy guidelines. But this is from the Associated Press. It says, breaking: Israel's army tells Palestinians to temporarily evacuate from parts of Rafah in southern Gaza, signaling the ground invasion is imminent. So right now, there's safe zones that are no longer safe. And it's like, what are the people, what are they supposed to do? Right? And you can't share this because, you don't know exactly what's going on in the ground, because you have corporate media that is giving a different narrative, whereas you have other media that may be more adversarial, like Al Jazeera, that would probably be more critical of what's going on the ground. And they don't want to. Now, it says Hamas accepts Gaza ceasefire. Israel says it will continue talks, but presses on with Rafah attacks. It's like, if you actually want to do a ceasefire, if that's your goal, and wanting to actually, have a more peaceful resolution, then why are you continuing to attack? Why are you continuing with attacking if Hamas is saying, okay, yeah, we will do a ceasefire? It says Hamas said Monday it accepted an Egyptian Qatari ceasefire proposal, but Israel said the deal did not meet its core demands and it was pushing ahead with an assault on the Gaza city of Rafah. Still, Israel said it would continue negotiations. Wait, how can you continue negotiations if you're still attacking? See, this is the problem, because if Israel goes, oh, well, that's not good enough, then it's like, okay, well, that's acceptable. But if the Palestinians say it's not acceptable, then Palestinian resistance gets attacked for not accepting. See the hypocrisy there? It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And so this is why it's important for us to have, these outlets that are reporting and adversarial towards these governments. Let me share this also here. Right Brain TV says, if Rafah is invaded, it's the end of civilization, and here's why. Our government will know that they can publicly exterminate 1 million plus people, and no one will stop it. What message does that send to the empire? Quote, we don't gotta hide what we used to do in the shadows anymore, end quote. Then it's over. And this is something that I think is really necessary for everybody to keep in mind, is that the empire knows that if they're able to do this to Palestinians in Gaza, what can they do to us here? Remember, outlets like RT America is not in here anymore. It's not operating in the United States anymore. This is why it's important for us to keep our eyes peeled and pay attention to what they're doing. Netanyahu really is just a monster. And Netanyahu really is just indicative of who Netanyahu is really just a product of the United States. And everything he does really is what America is at its core. And unfortunately, you know, there has to be a true organizing and rising up, not just protests, but there has to be an organizing to take the power away from maniacs like Netanyahu, maniacs like Biden, maniacs like Trump, so that we can actually have true liberation and peace. Because ultimately, they're going to destroy us all. You know, we're being destroyed slowly day by day, but they're just escalating things. Look at what they're trying to do in Ukraine with the war on Russia. Look what they're trying to do, you know, to basically get rid of Palestinians in Gaza, not just in Gaza, but also the West Bank. And then look what they're trying to toying with a war with China by, you know, via proxy war in Taiwan. This is why it is important for those of us who are in news outlets, especially independent media, do not stop. Keep supporting. You know, even if it's not me, you know, I have a tiny little channel, right? But what about other, you know, larger channels? So you have the Gray Zone, for instance. You have RBN, you have Savvy Sabs, you have Richard Medhurst, you have The Left Lens with Danny Haifong, you have Breakthrough News, you have many different outlets that are also talking about this. You have Abby Martin, you know, Dan Cohen, so many different people that are speaking out. So keep up supporting independent media, even if you can't afford to do it financially. If you can just share their links, share their websites, their articles. You have Caitlin Johnstone that's doing great work. You have Margaret Kimberly, Black Agenda Report. They're doing great work. Please make sure to support independent media however you can, because there is a war on free speech, and there's a war on anti-imperialist, anti-war speech. Continuously watch this space. Did you like the stream? Go ahead and give the stream a like. Thank you so very much to everyone. I'm checking it now, Roger. Looks like let me see. Hang on. Okay. All right, so let me share this really quick so that I can get to this, Roger. And yeah, I am running way behind. Okay. So Roger says, here's what I meant to send: the outlines of the age range on the vertical and the source of media colored bars and horizontal age range Watch then matched them both up. Sagar explained how this graph shows how millennials with Zoomers live in totally different worlds. Then silent matures with baby boomers with us as usual. Gen Xers suffering from middle child syndrome. Unlike before, the smartphone where we all sat down in front of the TV and watched the same news and walked it away with different opinions. Now we live both in two totally different worlds. So, okay, so which do you feel more sympathy with, Israel or Palestinians? Lean towards Palestinians. Interesting. So, red is print media, green is podcast and YouTube, blue is TikTok and Instagram. Oh, I'm sorry. Red is print media, cable news is green, podcast and YouTube is blue, and yellow is TikTok and Instagram. So, leans towards Palestinians. Of course, TikTok and Instagram has the most. Then podcasts and YouTube at 26%. And then leans towards Palestinians is cable news is 18% and print media is 20%. Neither Israel nor Palestinians, it kind of starts to equal out a little bit, though it is more bigger for the cable news and podcast YouTube. Leans towards Israel. Print media is massive. That's 42%. But that print media is mainly the legacy media, Washington Post, New York Times. You have Vox and all these different ones. They lean towards Israel definitely heavily. And then Don't Know, it's a huge amount, or TikTok and Instagram at about a quarter at 24%, which is very interesting. So thank you so very much for that, Roger. This one is, do you feel that anti-Semitism has increased a lot? So over print media is the greatest. Then cable news, then podcasts, YouTube, and then TikTok and Instagram increased a little. Increased a little, I'm sorry. Decreased a little. Why is that 7% so big? Wait a minute. Oh, okay. Decreased a lot. Decreased a lot says, okay. Interesting. All right. And then let's go to overall. Do you think the Biden administration is sending too much, too little, or right about amount of aid of Israel? Too much. Well, of course, TikTok and Instagram, they think is too much. Interesting. Podcasts and YouTube, they 47% think they're sending too much. About right is, cable news. And for the most part, print media. Too little is cable news and print media are the majority. And then Don't Know, of course, is print media. The biggest ones are print media and TikTok and Instagram. All right. And then we have this one. Has the Israeli military gone too far? 41% of people on TikTok and Instagram say that Israeli military has gone too far. 45% from podcasts and YouTube. Then a third from cable news says Israeli military has gone too far. And a third of print media has Israeli military gone too far. Yeah, some people still think that we should send them more money. Interesting. About right. Interesting. And so almost a third at, print media, a quarter at cable news. Not far enough. Podcast, YouTube, they must be watching Ben Shapiro. And then Don't Know is 31%. 31% print, 26% cable news, 27% podcast, YouTube, and then TikTok, Instagram is 33%. Interesting. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy, man. All right, so let's go to the chat. Says forward to marker 5014. Said just because someone is racist and extremely right wing, don't dismiss everything they say. 1991 and 1982. Listen to Pat. Also check the DM. I just checked the DM. So hang on. 5014. I gotta erase 5014. Let me see. All right, so let's share this. And yes, that is good old boy Kit Cabello, friend to the channel. All right, let's see.
Lift a finger. Let's talk about why they're not going to help. Well, we got to time travel. We're going to go way, way, way back in time before the internet even became the monster that we know it as it is today. We're going to go ahead and travel before social media was ever a thing. Let's talk about the influence of AIPAC and how Israel started controlling everything in Washington, D.C. Hey, Pat, take it away.
You've also said that Congress is...
Now, the volume is low, so I will not be interrupting as much, but there are subtitles here.
an Israeli-occupied territory. Now, what do you mean by that?
I said on the McLaughlin group in response to a question, Jim, they said, do you think that the Congress of the United States will resist this demand for further aid? I said, throughout a crack I'd heard. I said, no, the Congress of the United States is Israeli-occupied territory. What I meant by that is the most powerful lobby in Washington, which Congress can't stand up to. One of the most powerful is certainly the pro-Israeli lobby. It has gotten its way in this town year in and year out. And I don't think the automatic votes of the Congress of the United States for $3 and $4 billion worth of aid.
Okay, so I will obviously be upping the volume on this clip. But what Pat Buchanan is saying is how Washington, D.C. has become now an enclave for Israel, and how there were politicians then that were delivering further aid to Israel because Israel was demanding it, and how Israel has been sending its lobby groups to more or less bribe and control these politicians through any means.
To Israel are necessarily in the national interest of the United States, and that comment, which is to ridicule the subservience of the Congress of the United States, is perfectly valid. I do not believe my government should subsidize Israeli socialism, which we have done.
He goes on to say that the government should not be subsidizing Israeli socialism and that we shouldn't be funding it at all, period.
And I do not believe we should subsidize a policy on the West Bank, the Jordan River, which denies the Palestinian people rights which I support from Lithuania to Croatia. If I also believe that...
Now, I thought there were more subtitles in this. I was wrong about that, so I apologize to all of you. But again, he goes on to furthermore say about how the whole system has not only failed, but on how both parties are now being controlled by lobby groups from Israel.
That Pat Buchanan is entitled to stand up and speak out against any kind of political lobby, whether it's the Greek lobby, Aid for Greece, or whether it's the pro-Israeli lobby, Aid for Israel, without being called vile names.
And you think that's what's happened to you?
Let me tell you something, Jim. When this little flap is 18 months old,
well,
I made this crack. I know Buckley's talking about an 18-month-old column. Let's forget that. When this broke, I made that wiseacre crack about the Amen corner. It was wiseacre, and it was very funny. You know what happened as a consequence of that? People called my newspapers that carried my column and said, drop Buchanan. AIPAC listed 5 conservative columnists who were accepted.
The Jewish
No, the pro-Israeli lobby, right. I went out to speak in the country, and a little girl from the junior league said, I get these horrible calls from New York about you. People.
And what he's going on to say there is how there are people who have been calling his newspaper saying that they need to drop Pat Buchanan. Drop him quick, because he is bad, because he has been critical of Israel. Sounds shockingly familiar. Hey, Daily Wire, remember what you did to Candace Owens? Silencing her.
Woo, boy. And yes, Pat Buchanan was a far right guy, and yet he expressed the right of Palestinians too. It's crazy, right? How things have flipped over the years is just interesting. But yes, thank you so very much for that. And then we have a comment on The Rock. I think it's from Hempcar. Yes, Hempcar says, good 30-second clip of Rabbi saying that Arabs, Judaism, but Zionism with music and slow motion for effect. That's what it's all about these days. Spectacle. Okay, so let me share that. So let's go. So basically, a rabbi was basically saying that it wasn't the issue of Arabs, it was really Zionism being the problem. So a Jewish rabbi was talking about that. Thank you so very much for that, Hempcar, as well. All right, so let's go to the rest of the chat. I want to make sure I get to these beautiful, fine people as well. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, it's Jacqueline says, funny how none of these babies were ever named and that there were never funeral or memorial services for them. Absolutely. Like, were all those 40 different funeral services? Let me see. And also, good question. If Israel's in the right, why are they so scared about journalists reporting the news? Absolutely, guy. Let me see. Randall Online says, one guy I watched said that even though there are a lot of settler colonial projects all over the world, Israel is fresh enough where there is hope of stopping it. Yeah. I think it's still, where we can still stop this settler colonial project. And then we can also try to, and if we can stop a settler colonial project, we can reverse settler colonial projects as well. Namely, Turtle Island right here. We can reverse it. I think we can. I think we should. Black Unit Griffin says, I have photos from Twitter that shows decomposed corpses. Yes. Unfortunately, that's going on right now. And these are Palestinian babies that are being dug out. Zoe says, we live in a distraction economy. Absolutely. I fully agree with that as well. Zavi Benjamin, thank you so very much for being in the chat on the Twitter side. All right. Let me see. All right. And then Bad Cookie says, JB, I have gone into my evil phase. If you hear knocking at your door, it's probably me leaving a bag of flaming poo at your door. You sure it's not the IPAC people? Yeah. And yes, this is my kafia behind me. Thank you. All right, so I got to get going. So yes, I am way over time because I got some stuff I got to do. I got some stuff I got to take care of. But look, if you guys have not already, thank you so very much. If you're watching on the Twitter side, and if you guys would like to, you guys can come on over to the YouTube side and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Last time I checked, I was only 18 subscribers away from 4,000. So if there's 18 of y'all that would like to subscribe to the channel and get me over that hump of 4,000, hey, go ahead. Cool. I would appreciate it very much. Also, just to let you guys know, later this week, I will be getting into Of the Water in the Spirit by Melodoma Patrice Some. So I'll be getting into that reading. I will also continue in the reading of The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. We're going to continue in that reading. And then we're going to continue in the reading of the new book that we're reading, Prejudicial Black America and the Presidents by Margaret Kimberly. So that's going to be a great time in reading that book. So if you guys would like to get into the books that I read, you guys can actually go to my channel and go into the playlist section. And then I have the books listed there so that you guys can go ahead and listen in to the reading and discussion. It's not a reading like an audiobook. It's me stopping at intervals and also talking about what was said, adding some of my commentary in as well. So it's not an audiobook reading. It's just a reading and discussion. So it's commentary for that. So if you guys would like to, you guys can get into that. It is wonderful. I really appreciate it. Also, let me see. Who do I have coming on next week? I know I'm supposed to have somebody coming on next week. I'm trying to think. Let me see. Next week, I will be having news stories next week. So if you guys would like to, you guys can tune in, and I'll be discussing that as well. And I just saw what you said. And so thank you so very much for tuning in. Okay, just wanted to make sure I'm checking on some stuff. Let me check on the Rumble side. Did anybody say anything else in Rumble? I'm just checking because I want to make sure, because I know people on the Rumble side, they get left out, and I don't want them to feel left out. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. So, all right. So thank you so very much for that. And so, yes, just keep doing what you're doing, and speaking out against, what's going on. I think it's deeply important. And yes, I don't think I don't think I would get in trouble for this, because this is showing people celebrating. But I just want to share this because I like to humanize people, right? Humanizing the Palestinian people is deeply important, so that we know that they have hopes, they have dreams, they love intensely, just like we do. They have fears, they have lives that they want to live out just like the rest of us. And so I think that's important. So I think I'll close out with that, if you guys would allow me to do that. And so I think it's important how we have to continue to keep speaking out. And also, while I'm here, while I have you all here, I think it's also important that we also speak out about the atrocities going on in Congo right now. There are millions of Congolese people that are also being massacred right now. And really, it's about Western powers that keep the Congolese people in slavery-like conditions. So if you guys would like to, please, start looking up what's going on in Congo too. I did a couple shows on it as well. If you guys would like to go on the channel and take a look at that. But we also cannot stop speaking about what's going on in Congo. Please make sure to continuously talk about it as well. So with that being said, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found them. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. Read, because reading is fundamental. And also support the people who are the most disenfranchised among you, because if you don't, then what happens if you become disenfranchised? It's over for you, which means it's over for the rest of us. Support independent media. Please take care to love everyone intensely and keep being kind to one another. Mwah! Forehead kisses to every single one of you. I love you all so very much for watching. You guys have yourself a wonderful evening. Take care, everybody.
هللوا يا مسيحي هللوا أرثوذكس وكاثوليك سرياني هللوا هللوا يا مسيحي هللوا لوثرية مع أقباط يا أرمن هللوا زينوا شموعكم وارقصوا بسيوفكم اشتقنا لك يا سبت النور الله محيي اصلكم زينوا شموعكم وارقصوا بسيوفكم اشتقنا لك يا سبت النور الله محيي اصلكم هللوا يا مسيحي هللوا ارثوذكس وكاثوليك يا سرياني هللوا يا مسيحي هللوا لوثرية مع أقباط يا أرمن هللوا كرمالك يا أم النور يا عذراء يا بتول كنائسنا متحدين رنموا هللوا كرمالك يا أم النور يا عذراء يا بتول سبت النور مجتمعين ضوي الشمعة وهللوا صليبك يا سيد الناس دكت له كل الأشراس مسيحي برفع الراس يا شباب وهللوا صليبك يا سيد الناس دكت له كل الأشراس مسيحي برفع الراس يا شباب وهللوا يا مسيحي هللوا أرثوذكس وكاثوليك يا سرياني هللوا يا مسيحي هللوا لوثرية مع أقباط يا أرمن هللوا
Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.